So Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, right at the top of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Hirchik es asichuch mirat defanos shloisha tefachim." If you took the schach and you put it was 3 tefachim away from the walls of the schach. So since it's 3 tefachim away, so you lose the concept of lavut. So there's open space, and we say that the sukkah is pasul. Now Rashi says, "La begoiva kamar." It's not on the height of the sukkah, ella b'mishcha. In other words, on this side, you have the walls here. You brought the schach 3 tefachim away from the walls. So it's psula. Why? The avir posel b'shlosha afilu min hatzad. So 3 pasels. Now we know the concept of doifen akuma, where the wall turns, right? And that is how many? It's 4 amas. So the question is, why here by 3 tefachim pasels it? So Rashi explains that right here. Usually we say if you have schach pasel that's on the side of the sukkah next to the wall, and we say it's okay. You take that schach that's pasel and it's like part of the wall, right? So in other words, you don't say the wall shoots over towards that space, but you say the schach becomes part of the wall. You see the difference? Yeah. If you say the wall shoots over, so even if you have open space, why would you say the wall just shoots over? And you have 4 amas. But we don't say, if you have schach pasel, you say the schach pasel becomes part of the wall. Usually when you use doifen akuma, you think the wall is bending over. Rashi is saying a nice concept here, that the schach becomes part of the wall. So therefore, if you have avir that's open 3 tefachim, the avir can't shoot and become part of the wall because it's nothing, right? That's why 3 tefachim becomes pasel.
You only say this for sukkah, doifen duma, whatever you call it. You only say it for Kuma. You only say it for Sukkah?
You're not for Shabbos, no.
Not for Shabbos.
So here, that's what Rashi says, Uvavira, when you have open space, you can't say that the schach becomes part of it because it's open walls. Rashi says, you can't say that the wall is shooting up over the sukkah, the schach pasel, and becomes crooked, and that the wall is shooting under the schach pasel, reaching the schach kasher, umaytis that absul min hasukah, because the imkain, if that's the concept, gam gabi avir nami nemahachi in our Mishnah. So why only 3 tefachim? So since Rashi says, since the Mishnah says that 3 tefachim becomes pasul, right? Must be that the concept is that the schach pasul becomes part of the wall. So therefore, there's no schach pasul there, and there's only schach kasher. But avir, you can't say that becomes part of the wall because it's space, it's open air. So therefore, 3 tefachim is pasul. The next case in our Mishnah is bayish and nifchas. You have a house with a roof, and in the middle of the roof, it opened up. So what do? You have your walls, everything is fine, and you put your schach in there. So you want to sit underneath there for your sukkah. So the Mishnah says, if from the walls of that home to the opening of where you put the schach, let's say you put it right in the middle of this room, right? So if you have from the schach kasher to the wall 4 amas of ceiling, right? Then you can't say doifen akuma. That's why we say pasul, right? The next case, you have a courtyard that is normally a courtyard is surrounded by homes, right? And then you do Eruvi Chetzeros. These homes had an achsadra in front of it. It's like a porch in front of it, right? It only had a roof. It doesn't have walls, this porch, right? So the walls of this achsadra really is the house walls that is in front of the house. The porch has walls from the house. But the porch itself is open spot, a space, and has a roof. And it opens into the chatzer, right? So now what everybody's going to do, like in Israel, you have the hotel, the Rome hotel. They have a big sukkah in the middle, right? So here too, you have the porch, you have the porches, and you put schach out, right? Is it okay? So the Mishnah says, we say those porches, when you put schach on top of that, it's not good. It's pasul, and we'll see the Gemara.
But
Why?
you have the roof already, so what are you putting the schach onto?
No, you have open space. The chutzner is open space.
Oh,
the chutzner is open space.
Right.
You have a chutzner, a yard, right? All open space, right? On the sides of the yard, you have homes. In front of each home, you have a porch. The porch has only a roof. So now what you do is you put schach from the roof of the chsadra over to the other chsadra, and you want to sit as a sukkah underneath.
In the chutzner.
Right, in the chutzner, you want to sit as a sukkah. So the Mishnah says puzzle. Why? Because the chsadra don't have walls. If the porches had their own walls, then it would become kosher. But since the walls are from the home, right? So therefore, it's puzzle. That's what the Mishnah says. Next case, sukkah gedola. You have a very large sukkah, she'ekifu b'davar she'ei mesachim bar. What do you do with a sukkah gedola? You put down, in other words, around, since it's a large sukkah, so you can't have schach all right across the thing, so you put first pasel dik schach on the sides, by the wall, right? And then you put the kosher schach on top of that. So we say, sukkah gedola she'ekifu b'davar she'ei mesachim bar. If you put pasel dik schach there, it's pasel. And we say, im yesh tachtav arba amos psula, right? If underneath that pasel dik, basically it's coming from the wall out more than 4 amos. And from here, more than 4 amos, then you put schach on top. We say it's pasel. Because there's no more doif and akuma, right? If it would be less, that pasel schach would be less than 4 amos, would be okay. Okay, Gemara. Kol hani lamali. Why do you need all these 4 cases in our Mishnah? Right? To list it. So Gemara says, Sricha, Diashmidim Bayish and Nivchaz. When we say when you have a house that all of a sudden there was an opening in the middle of the roof, and we say there it's pasal, deschach, Mishum Dahani Mechitzas Lebayis Avidan, because those mechitzas were made for the home. So therefore they're pasal. So therefore, if there's 4 amis. So we say if it's less than 4 amis, in other words, we say doif and akuma. If you look at Rashi, the third wide line, Mishum Nahani mechitzas labayis avidan liyas dof and labayis. Those mechitzas were made for the home, and that is part of the sukkah. V'harabayis, right now, when it opened up and you put kosher schach down on top, nasa sukkah. The home became the sukkah. Hilkach shadina on mechitzas basar sukkah aydei ikum with doif and akuma. If it's less than 4 amis,
because the roof and the house are all house, so you figured.
And the house becomes a sukkah.
Right. So
we're saying those walls become the walls of the sukkah. Aval back to Gemara. Aval chatzer hamukefes achsadra. But the yard, the courtyard that's surrounded with the porches, the mechitza lav lachsadra vida. Those mechitzas were not made for the achsadra. They were made for the home. So I might say that it won't work. In other words, aim low. So we say tzricha if there's more than 4 amas, but if it's less, it's okay. We say mishum schach kosher. The reason why we can say daif and akuma less than dalar amis because you use actually material that is kosher schach. The whole problem is it's a little too far away. But if it's less than the 4 amas, we say daif and kicks in. Aval sukkah gedayla, that large sukkah, shekifu b'dava she'im esachim that you put down around the walls, things that are totally puzzle for schach. The schach puzzle who so aim aloi. Even if it's less than 4 amas, I would say maybe daif and akuma doesn't come in. Therefore, tzricha, we say that it's okay. Actually, this is the easy part. Now we're getting into the tough part. Amar Rabbah. Ashkesino l'Rabbanan de Be'Rav. I found the rabbis of the yeshiva of Rav, the Yasvei, the Kamrei, they were sitting and saying over that Avir Paisel B'Shlosha. If you have open space, in other words, from the wall, you have a wall, and you have open space 3 tefachim away from the wall, and then the schach starts here, right? Since it's 3 tefachim, we say it's pasul, because there's no more lovit, right? So that's what they said, which we know that. And then they came along and said, that is by Avir, is 3 tefachim. Schach pasol, paisel b'arba. If you have schach pasol, not open space, you use not kosher schach, that would pasol with 4 tefachim. This is what they said, which is not what we learned, right? We were learning the whole time 4 amas, right? Yeah. If you have 4 amas away from the wall, we can say doif and akuma. So let's see the Gemara now. V'amina lahu. And I told these yeshiva boys, Anah, Avir the Paisel b'shloshim and alahu. You said beautifully that open space becomes pasul with 3 tefachim. Where did you know that concept? So you knew it from, you're going to say right away, we learned our Mishnah. Now we learned our Mishnah. If the schach is away from the walls, 3 tefachim, open space, it says psula. It says 3. So the Gemara says, so where'd you come up with this concept of 4 Tvachim? Our Mishnah says, Schach Pasel Nami Le'lisel El Bar Bahamas. Why 4 Tvachim, which is a smaller shear, right? You should say, you yeshiva boys should say 4 Amis. Because now we learned in the same Mishnah, Bayish and Nivchas, a home that the roof opened up in the middle, V'sichach al Gabav, Im Yesh Min HaSichuch Lekosel, from the Schach, the kosher Schach, to the wall, if it's Dalet Amis, Psula. Less than that, we say it's okay, because you say Daifen Akuma, right? V'amrili. So this is what I told them. Like, what's going on? Where did you get this concept of 4 Tvachim? So V'amrili, they said, well, 1 second, Rebbe. Bar Minadahi. Leave that out. Why? Because the Rav Shmuel Amr Tavayu, they both said Mishum Daifen Akuma Nagabu. There, it's a case of Daifen Akuma. When do we say Dalet Amis is okay? That is only if it's by the side of the wall, right? If this schach is less than Dalet Amis away, we say Daifen Akuma, like we explained, it bends right over, right? Dalet Amis, right? So that's when we say Dalet Amis. But the 4 Tvachim I'm talking about, where the guy built the schach, and it's here in the middle. It's let's say 8 amas away from the walls, right? And it's right here in the middle. You put schach puzzle right in the middle. Could you use this? In other words, everything else is kosher, but in the middle there is schach puzzle of 4 Tvachim.
Is there a share for that?
So that's why the yeshiva boy said if it's in the middle, that puzzles the sukkah. Why? Why? Because you can't say Daifen Akuma, because it's more than 4 amas away from the end, and there's 4 Tvachim there, therefore it's puzzle. Now if you look at Rashi, at the first wide line, Rashi says, let's go back to the beginning of the Rashi. The Rav Shmuel, 3 lines up. The Rav Shmuel am tavai mishum Daifen Akuma nagabo lahachshir. Normally we say Daifen Akuma to be machshir darmin and Daifen hu v'loy schach. That schach puzzle we say it shoots to the wall and it becomes part of a wall, and therefore there's no schach puzzle. Everything is kosher. That's okay if you could shoot the wall, right? When do I say the number 4 Tvachim is it's away from the wall, more than 4 amas? So you can't say Daifen Akum anymore. So what is it? It's in the middle of the sukkah, like I said, more than 4 amas away from the wall. These 4 Tvachim of Schach Puzzle, since it's in the middle of the sukkah, right in the middle, it's more than Dalet Amas, it's still there. You can't say it's part of the wall. It's too far away from the wall that it becomes part of the wall, right? So therefore, these 4 Tvachim in the center of the sukkah make a chatzitza in the sukkah ben kosher to kosher, between the kosher schach all around it, right? So that's why it puzzles. And Rashi says v'arba, the 4 Tvachim is have a makim chashuv liyais chatzitza. 4, it makes that place a makim chashuv, so it's chotzeitz all the schach around it, and since it's its own sukkah like and it's all puzzle, it puzzles the sukkah. That's how they explained why they came up with a number of 4 Tvachim. Back to the Gemara. So again, they told me, the Rabbi Shmuel Amar Tavai, Mishum Daifen Akuma Nagaba. Normally 4 amas is if it's close to the wall, but we're saying the case of 4 Tvachim is where it's in the middle of the sukkah, like 8 amas away from the wall. And I told them, so they're going back and forth in conversation. So I told them, Ma ilu. Let me ask you, if Ika Schach Pasel Pachas Marba, according to you, that you came up with this magic number of 4 Tvachim, let's say it would be less than 4 Tvachim in the middle. Everything's okay, because it's not 4 Tvachim. But guess what? Right next to that space that has Schach Pasel less than 4 Tvachim, there's an open space of less than 3 Tvachim. Wow. So by themselves, what would you say? Everything's okay. Less than 4 Tvachim is good. Less than 3 Tvachim open space is also okay, right? So he's saying they wouldn't be mitzvah. My ilu ikaschach pasel pachas marabah. The avir, and right next to it, there's avir open pachas mishlosha, which is also okay normally. So you're going to say my kshera. You're going to say that it's kosher. because it doesn't have that magic number 4 by schach puzzle, and it doesn't have the magic number 3 by the open space. Everything's okay. But how about malya b'shipudim? Now all of a sudden that's okay. All of a sudden the guy comes along, so there's a space of less than 4 tvachim, open space, everything's okay because it's less than 3 tvachim. A guy puts in all of a sudden a metal rod. All of a sudden there, all of a sudden it becomes 4 tvachim now. So what are you going to say? You're going to say puzzle.
Empty space and a metal rod.
So you have an empty space, let's say, of 3 tvachim and a half of schach puzzle, which is everything's fine now. You have open space of 2.5 of open space, which is also okay, and they're next to each other. Everything's fine. But if a guy comes along and puts in a rod, let's say a tefach wide, it's going to be mitzvah with the schach puzzle of 3, and make it puzzle. That's what, logically, right? So he says it doesn't make sense because he's going to explain. Normally, you're saying schach puzzle is 4. Avir normally is 3. So what's more chamerdik?
3.
3 is more chamerdik. So avir is a psul of more chumrah than schach puzzle. So if that chumradik avir, if it would be opened, and it's next to that schach puzzle that's less than 4, they don't combine, right? So why, when you bring in a shput that's normally more kuladik, it does make it puzzle. Like he doesn't understand that concept. That's the Gemara. Okay, you're going to look at thinking that, but that's what the conversation is. What he's trying to tell these yeshiva boys that this concept of 4 amis doesn't make sense. That's all he's saying. He's trying to prove that this whole 4 doesn't make sense. Back to the Gemara. Ma ilu ikuschach puzzle. Pachas marba. If you would have a space in a sukkah of schach puzzle pachas marba, would be okay, and right next to it would be avir pachas mishlosha. You would say ma'ik shera. But if you come along in malya b'shipudim, that open space, all of a sudden you filled it up with metal rods. So then you're going to say puzzle because it's mitzaref with that original schach puzzle of pachas marba. But he asked for avir ha-paisel b'shloisha, the open space that normally puzzles with shloisha has that chumrah, it should be k'schach puzzle ha-paisel barba. It should be on the same level, so the avir should be mitzaref with the 4, with the less than 4, and make it puzzle. And you're not going to say that. For Hamrali, they said, 1 second. So you have a problem with our number 4 of 4 tvachim. So the yeshiva boy said back to Rebbe, according to you, you have the same problem. Because you came along not with a number 4 tvachim. You have a Rebbe's basically saying he has a number avir of 3 tvachim and dalet amis of schach puzzle. So according to you, this whole concept is okay. Because we said 4 tvachim, you have a whole problem. You have the same problem with your dalet amis. Why? Look what the Gemara says. Nami, the amrit schach puzzle is paisel ba'arba amis. You're saying, in other words, Rabbah that saw his yeshiva boy sitting there, you're saying, oh, there's no 4 tvachim number, it's only 4 amis. But I have the same problem that you have with us. If you would have schach puzzle less than 4 amis, it's okay, because you say daifin akuma. And then right next to that open space of less than 4 amis, you have avir pachas mishlosha. You have open space completely less than 3. So by itself, less than 4 is okay, less than 3 is okay. So what are you going to say, Rebbe? Ma'ik shera. But what are you going to... So, ma'ale b'shipudim, then let's say you fill up that avir pachas mishlosha with shipudim, that are schach puzzle, so you're going to say puzzle. So you have the same problem again. Hey, avir, we should ask the same question. Hey, avir pachas mishlosha, the open space that is so chumradik normally, that it puzzles even in a small space of 3 tvachim, it should be k'schach puzzle paisel b'arba amis. Should be mitztarev with that kuladik open space of 4 amis. So what's going on? The same problem you have with us, with the 4 tvachim, I have with your dalet amis. So va'aminu no, and Rabbah says, I told them, hi my, how could you compare both cases? According to me, the amina arba amis, that I come along with this number of 4 amis, and we say daifin akuma. You know why that 4 amis is there? It's not mishum shi'ura v'laf shi'uru. It's not because of sheer dalet amis. This concept of dalet amis, ha'ilab, in order to look at Rashi, mishum shi'ura v'laf shi'uru. The arba amis really have a sheer lepuzzle. We're saying the arba amis you say it becomes possible because you don't say daifin akuma. Ubepachas mekan ein shir lifsal. Ve'eina tam. This magic number of 4 ames is not because mishum daifin akuma. It's not because all of a sudden you can't say daifin akuma. But the reason why we come up with this concept of dalet ames is elakach shiurai lifsal Allah al ma'ishim Sinai kishar kol shiurim. That's the psul of halach l'ma'ishim Sinai. Dalet ames is halach l'ma'ishim Sinai. If you don't have dalet ames of schach pasel, it's okay. Even though you have avir next to it, but that avir doesn't make the dalet ames of halach l'ma'ishim Sinai. Therefore, that's what the Gemara says. Hi, lav shiurehu. The avir of 3 tfachim is not a shear. Since the concept of 4 amis and the concept of 3 tfachim are not similar, because dalet amis is Allah Ma'ashim Sinai, and avir of 3 tfachim is shear, in other words, open space. Therefore, lo mitztarfe. If the avir is next to this 4 amis, they're not mitztaref. So if the dalet amis, if there's no dalet amis of schach pasel, and right next to it you have open space of 2, it doesn't passel. Because it's not mitzdaref with it. Because they're different entities. 3 tfachim is 1 shear. Dalet ames is Allah Ma'ashim Sinai. Rav is telling you yeshiva boys that came along with this concept of 4 tfachim. So it's not Allah Ma'ashim Sinai. Why did you come up along with 4 tfachim? Like Rashi explains, if it's in the middle, it's too far apart. It's chotzeitz. So it's involved in shear now. So this whole concept of 4 tfachim comes back to shear. Avir of 3 tfachim is shear. In other words, chach pasel is of dal tfachim is shear. Therefore, they should be mitzdarif and pasel. And you guys are saying no. That's why Rav had a problem with them. According to you, the Amrisa shear is mishum aflaga. We're saying that the dalet tfachim is because it's in the center of the sukkah and it divides. There's a chotzeitz, right? So mali ispale b'schach pasel, mali ispale b'schach pasel v'avir. What's the difference if they're divided with complete dalet tfachim of schach pasel, or they're divided with 3 tfachim of schach pasel and 1 tefach of open space? It's still divided. You're away. You can't reach your mamish. It's a makom chashuv there already, right? And so he answers them. Amle Abaya. Okay, so that's what the conversation was. Now, all of a sudden, Abaya kicks in. So Rabbah had this conversation with the yeshiva boys. So now, Amalei Abaya says, one second, Rebbe. Well, Amar Nami, you're right. You explained that the Dalet Amis is Allah Ma'ashim Sinai, and Shleisha Tvachim is a shear. But Lamar Nami, you, Rabbah, need a Leishavi Shiurei B'Sukkah Gedola. You're right, if you have a large sukkah, in other words, Dalet Amis has one concept, and 3 Tvachim has another concept. But if you come along with a Sukkah Ketana, let's say you have, Rashi says Sukkah Ketana, doesn't mean a small sukkah, it means Sheshireh Mitzumtzam. You got the minimum shear of a sukkah. You have 7 Tvachim, by 7 Tvachim, which is right? So if you have that exact shear, right? Isn't the Dalet Amis concept of schach pasel and open space, all of a sudden they're all the same? Because once you have 3, it's gone, right? There's no more loved. You have no. So over there, you're going to say they're all similar. Amalei, no. There, Hasan Lamishum Deshav Shur Ladadiu. It's not because the Dalet Amis and the 3 Tfachim have the same shear. There, it's a Mitzias. El Mishum Delasel Shur Desuku. If you have more than 3 Tfachim opened, either through Schach Pasel Avir, you just don't have a sukkah, right? If you had a sukkah G'dayla, you're right? Does Rashi explain it here? Rashi says. Let's look at Miloi Shavish Shurayu, the Havamid Gemara. Al Karcha, if you have a small sukkah, exactly 7 Tvachim, Al Karcha Echad Zeb Psula, Begimel Tvachim. The Dalet Amis of Schach Pasel would kick in here with 3 Tvachim. Why? Keeping the Nafak with Taras Lavud, since you can't say Taras Lavud, Chashalib Tsurli Shur the Sukkah. The Sukkah becomes smaller. So therefore, Vikivin the Shavish Shurayu, since their share of Dalet Amis of Schach Pasel and open space of Avir 3 Tvachim are similar, so in Shum Sukkah, since we found it in a Sukkah Ktana, then let's starfe, it should be mitzdarif even in a Sukkah Gdola. So I'm like, no, Hasan the Shneim, Paislam by Begimel, Loi Mishum the Shavi Shur and Lifsal. Not because they're similar in shear. El Mishum the Leisel is Shur the Sukkah. In that small Sukkah, there's no shear. But in a Sukkah Gdola, we don't say mitzdarif because they're not similar. Okay.
If you had a large sukkah with, and the center of it still left 7 tvachim to the edge, would that still be kosher even if the...
How many walls do you have around it?
Well, you have 4 walls, right? And it should, it should still be
if
kosher.
You have the walls, right.
Yeah.
Okay. The Gemara now. So you're saying now, you explained that since Dalet Amis is not the same as Gimel Tfachim, they're not mitzdarf. You're saying when things are not similar in Shir, they're not mitzdarf? I'll show you a Mishnah, but tonight we learned a Mishnah, Habeget. So this Mishnah is talking about Tumas Medris. Right? Tumas Medris is not through direct maga. If you sit on it and you press it down, so there's a lot of chumras of Tumas Medris. So in other words, Tumas Medris only applies something that's made to sit or lay on it, right? So a beget, if you have a beget, we say that the Tumas Medris kicks in only if it's shlosha al shlosha, only if it has 3 tfachim al 3 tfachim. Rashi says, why? Im yichato lemishkav hazav metame lasis avatuma b'mishkav hazav amidra. All the chumras of Tumas Medris kicks in, but the beged has to have a minimum shear of 3 by 3. Yesterday we learned, if anybody was here yesterday, we learned also of 3 by 3 at spas. Right. We learned with the shmata, right? With the cloth, 3 at spas, right? So why here 3 tvachim? So the difference is there we were talking about a regular tumah, not a Tumas Medris. So 3 at spas is enough to make it a beged chashuv, to be metame. Here we're talking about something that has to be a tumas mishkav. It has to be larger, right? And the trick of always remembering it is shlosh al shlosh is lashon nekeva, so that's tfachim. When it says shalosh al shalosh, is that spa'os. That's what if you looked yesterday, it didn't say shlosha, it says shalosh. Okay. Hasak, if you have a sack, so to make it into tumas medras, it has to be larger. Bar al abba. Ha'ar, hide, chamisha al chamisha. Mapat, a mat, so it has to be even larger, shisha al shisha. So now it says, so they have separate shurim, right? And then it says, V'tana Allah, we learned a braysa, ha'beged v'asak, or a sak v'ar, ha'ar v'amapitz, mitztar from zeh mezeh. They could be mitzdarv to make into the shir to make tumas mishkav. I loy shavib shirayu. They're not similar, and still we say tzirav. So why can't we say by dalet amis and open space too? So Gemara says no. Hasam kiritana taima. There's a different reason there. Amr Rab Shimon, my tam. Why do we say that you can be mitzdarv a beget and sak together, even though there's loy shavib shira? Because hayol. They are similar because they could become similar to when somebody wants to sit on something. If I'm a katseya mikulan, if you have a beget and all of a sudden you start,
which shear are they going to be mitzvah? Right. In other words, you have 2 pieces that are less than their own shear. Right. Mitzdarf, and they mitzdarf to the smaller shear or the bigger shear?
Well, whichever one. If you have a beget that doesn't have 3, that has only 2, and you bring along a 1 of a sock, it's mitzdarf. So the question is, how could you be mitzdarf? The leishavi shirayu. That's Gemara's question. So Gemara answers is, you know why they're mitzdarf? There's another reason. Because the Mishnah says in Mekatsei and Mekulan, if you start cutting up, all of a sudden you have this cloth, and you start starting to trim around it really nicely. And what do? You make it al tefach. All of a sudden you cut it nicely, and you beautify it into a shear of tefach al tefach. We say tameh, even though it doesn't have 3 by 3. But since you started working on this piece of cloth and you made it, even tefach al tefach is okay. So even a sock normally is 4 by 4, but if you start trimming it, even tefach al tefach is okay. So therefore, beget, sak, all these cases have something similar to them. Therefore, they could be mitzdarev. So the Gemara says, tefach al tefach l'may chazi. You cut a piece of cloth down to tefach. What are you going to use it for? On the side, I can't find in this Gemara. L'ta'el al gabe chamar. You could patch it. In other words, up on a saddle for a chamar. Okay. Surah, the Gemara says, Amalai Shmaita Bahait Lishna. In Surah, when they learned this Brisa, now we're going back what we started the day with. What Rav says, if you look at the Rashi 5 lines from the narrow lines on the bottom, Lahashmaita the Rav, the Amar Schach Pasel, Paisel Bedalit Be'emsa, the Schach Pasel, if it's in the middle of the Sukkah, even 4 Tfachim would be Pasel. That's That's the way they learned it, that statement. But if they came to buy, but in Ardai, Masne, they learned it a little differently. They learned like that. Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel, schach pasel be'emtza. If you have the schach pasel in the middle of the sukkah, which is more than 4 amas away from the sides, then paisel barabah would be pasel even with just 4 tfachim. Minatzad, but if the schach pasel is by the wall, then it will be paisel ba'arba amas. Then 4 amas is the number because you say daifin akuma. But Rav Amar bein minatzad, bein minaemtza. In our dog, they came along and Rav says that even in the middle of the sukkah, 4 amas comes. No, even 4 amas, not ta'al tfachim, right? So that's a big chiddush. So you could have in the middle of the sukkah, in other words, schach pasel, that it's less than 4 amas, it won't pasel the sukkah. Even though it's such a big space. But even though it's so far away from the wall, he says that. Now we're going to have a problem. Tanan. We learned in our Mishnah, and this Mishnah goes back a few days ago, it says, Nasan aleh neser. If you put on a sukkah a board, a plank, but it's rachav arba tfachim. It's 4 tfachim wide. Our Mishnah said that is kosher. Now, if you're going to remember, there was a machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. We're not going to go back into that, right? That Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. So now, Bishlama, so this basically is going to be... so right now, if you look at Rashi in the middle wide lines, so right now we feel that this Nesar was put this right middle of the sukkah. So the Gemara says like this: Bishleim Rav. So that's why it's kosher, because it's only 4 tfachim. It's not 4 amas, right? But according to Shmuel, that says in the middle 4 tfachim. So I might shera. Why should it be kosher? In other words, it's 4 tfachim, and in the middle 4 tfachim passes it. The Gemara says, that you put this plank binatzad. You didn't put it in the middle of the sukkah, you put it close to the wall, right? So no problem. So therefore, you have arba amis, the magic number for amis that passes. This plank is 4 tfachim, it's okay. So Tashima, I'll prove you a little different. I'll ask you another question. We learned Shnei Sadinin, if you have two sheets, right? So sheets by itself is chach pasel, because they're mikabel tumah, they're a beged, right? So therefore, they're mitzdarif. They're mitzdarif to make schach pasel. You have one sheet, let's say, very small, and you're mitzdarif another sheet to mitzdarif it to make it pasel. Shnei nesarim, but if you have 2 blanks, aim mitzdarfim. Those 2 planks are not mitzdarif for this year, right? Rameir Aimer, no. Nesarim we learned is kisadidin. Planks, wood, is just like sadina. So now the Gemara says, Bishleim lach lishna, according to Rav, the Amar Rav, bein be'emtza me'etzad, arba amis, in the middle. So my mitzdarfin v'al amis. When we say these 2 nesarim are mitzdarif, in other words, because these nesarim are, let's say, 4 tfachim by itself, so if you have 2 large nesarim, they will be mitzdarif v'al amis. If you're not mitzdarif, they would be okay on their own because they don't hit the number of 4 amas. But according to the Lashon, that Rav says that if a plank is in the middle, which is chach pasel, is arba, hechidami. If the plank by itself has 4 tfachim, why do you need another board to be mitzdarif with it? On its own, it's pasel because it's 4 tfachim. And either less by dalit, and if it doesn't have dalit, it's kanya ba'almaninu. It's kosher. It's a piece of wood. It's kosher schach. It's bamboo sticks, right?
He's being a starif.
What's that? By itself, it's kosher.
By itself, it's kosher.
So why mitzdarif, right? If you look at Rashi at the bottom, 3 lines on the bottom, be either less by arba. Kanin ba'almaninu to Rav, according to Rav, who damim b'shmaita delil b'nisarim she'ein behem arba divrei hakol kshera. Everybody holds it's kosher. So therefore, what's the problem? If it's kosher schach, you're not mitzdarver with something else to make it puzzle. So Gemara says, back to the Gemara, le'olam dis be'arba. Really, the planks, these woods, have 4 tfachim. Umay mitzdarif. It means not when they're in the middle, because in the middle 4 by itself would passel it. Why mitzdarfin la'arba amis minatzad. You mitzdarv them for the arba amis minatzad, where you could say doifen akuma. So therefore, the plank by itself, which is only 4 tfachim, would not passel there, right? But if you bring another piece of wood there, then it would passel. And we'll end right here.